slides. So while that's getting up there, oh, that's on me, I guess, right? Do I lean this way?
Oh, it wasn't working with Trello, so that's a different thing.
It's a different clicker. I'm not very computer. Okay. Well, I can go ahead and get started on a couple of things I was going to say before my images get up there. Do you mind practicing clicking for me and see if it comes on while I'm talking?
Yeah.
That'd be great. Okay, so I think I met a lot of you, or most of you here. So my name is Sarah Cleveland. I live in North Central Ohio. The long name is an RDMS. It's a registered diagnostic medical sonographer. Basically, it's an ultrasound tech. I have a couple different specialties, one of them being OBGYN. I no longer work full-time, but I did for a number of years, but then I began homeschooling. We do foster care, abolition, work on the streets. It was very time-consuming, so I just do part-time, but I'm still registered. I've been doing this about 15 years. All right, that's my first slide. I don't have that much time, so I'm just going to go down through, and I'm just going to knock this off. So I don't know a lot about history. I listen to Matt Torella, how awesome that is. I don't know a lot of these theology words, but I do know a lot about ultrasound, and I do know a lot about the heartbeat bill, because it's essentially an ultrasound bill, like Darren said. So I wrote this Facebook post. It was like top 9 reasons not to support the heartbeat bill. I'm just going to go down through them and read them, and then I'm going to hit specifically on a couple of these points some more information here about it. I'm going to prove it to you in some of the language of the bill itself. So the heartbeat bills are not the solution to this abortion mess that we're in. A lot of people have good intentions and think this is the best of what we got. It's not abolition, but man, it's going to protect those babies with beating hearts as early as 6 weeks. That's like going to protect all of these babies, right? So that's what they want you to believe. You see on all of these articles and the news about how it's going to ban abortion at 6 weeks. Like Catholic sites are saying this, pro-life sites are saying this. You know, just everything from pro-life to pro-choice, everybody's saying 6 weeks. First of all, this is one of the most important points. Ultrasound is completely operator dependent. It is the person doing the ultrasound that is telling the image where to go. When I have the probe in my hand, I tell the machine where to take that picture, right? So it's kind of like, this is the analogy I use, it's kind of like a gun versus just a tool. It can be used to save a life and protect a life. It can also be used for evil and murder somebody. An ultrasound machine, think of it the same way, okay? An ultrasound machine is really awesome, it's great, it can be life-affirming, show these mothers their babies, and it's fantastic. It can help further that bond between mother and child. It can also be used as a tool of death. Okay, ultrasound machines are inside of abortion facilities. They use ultrasound machines to date the pregnancy, to see how far along the baby is, to know how much to charge the mother to murder her baby, and what type of abortion procedures to use. So it's just a tool, right? It's not good or bad. So it's completely operator dependent. That's very important. So is the person doing the ultrasound and these heartbeat bills, who's the person doing it? It's the person that's going to be doing the abortion. You think they're going to be documenting a heartbeat? Never trust a murderer to tell the truth is kind of like one of my taglines, you know. I mean, it's just silly, right? The heartbeat bill is proposals. It's written into the bill itself not to use the very thing we need to detect the early heartbeat. It's an internal ultrasound. It's called a transvaginal ultrasound. At 6 weeks gestational age, a baby does have a heartbeat. That's from the last menstrual period, 6 weeks. If we're going by conception, that's actually 26 days after conception. I can see a baby 2 millimeters big with an internal ultrasound and a beating heart. It's amazing. 2 millimeters, that's very, very small. Okay? But in these heartbeat bills, the original is out of Ohio, where I'm from, but it's gone on to different states, and there's variances of these heartbeat bills in different states. So some of them do have an internal ultrasound, a lot of them don't. I'm going to talk about the one in Ohio, how it's just transabdominal imaging. It's actually written in there not to use an internal ultrasound. So it's written in there. There's no way that you can actually see a baby that's 6 weeks. It says if it's scanned on top of the belly instead of an internal scan, there's a slim to none chance this baby at 6 weeks will even be detected, even 7 to 8 weeks, depending on other different factors. These bills do not account for other factors, like the size of the woman and the position of the uterus. A thin woman with a normal position uterus is much easier to scan and much easier to obtain good images than an obese woman with a retroverted uterus or a tilted uterus. Marketing these bills when they say that they're just going to blanketly save all 6-week babies is just not practical, it's just not medically accurate at all. It's just a flat out lie. There are always exceptions to these bills, specifically the health and life exceptions for the mother. These terms are stated vaguely or not at all, leaving all of this up to the abortionist to determine these things. There's no justice established in these bills, there's no teeth to them. Even if it would pass into law and it would be upheld, even if, which it won't. But even if this abortion does take place under the heartbeat bills that goes into law, most people involved in procuring the death of this child have no charges brought against them at all. The only one who may be charged is the abortionist himself, and even that is a slap on the wrist. I'm not sure who would be turning that person in anyways, the mother who sought the abortion. These bills also teach society that we can pick an arbitrary point in a human being's life. Why a heartbeat? Why not brainwaves? Why not when the fingerprints are formed? What does any of that matter? Regulating abortion only perpetuates the idea that it is acceptable. Heartbeat bills are unconstitutional. Heartbeat bills keep abortion legally protected, and I'm just going down through all these points and I elaborate more on my page if you just want to follow me on my page or friend me. The heartbeat bills are obviously against the law of God. I mean, there's reason after reason after reason not to support the heartbeat bill. So I'm going to go through some details of some of those points. This is actually language of, it's SB 23, what it's currently called right now. It's gone through different numbers, different names. It's been reintroduced every year. It's currently called SB 23 in Ohio. And I don't know if you guys can see that very much at all. I might have to read it from here. Yeah. Okay, so this is page 15, 13? I'm going to go up a little bit closer here. So down on the line, starting at 411 there, I'm going to read this section to you, or or just kidding.
That cannot be excellent.
If you want to grab my computer bag, Anna, there's a hard copy in there, my bag right there. Hang on just a second. I have a hard copy, just in case it's back. Let me go. Okay, I actually printed this out. I have notes all over it. Hopefully we'll get that back up because there's other slides, but I'll just go on here. You just roll with it, right? Okay, so lines is on page 15 here. I'm going to start on lines 411. Oh, I lied. 405. A person who intends to perform or induce an abortion, remember this is the actual language of the bill, who intends to perform or induce an abortion on a pregnant woman shall determine whether the detectable heartbeat of the unborn human individual of the pregnant woman is carrying. The method of determining the presence of the fetal heartbeat shall be consistent with the person's good faith understanding of the standard medical practice, providing that if rules have been adopted under Division B of this section, the method chosen shall be one and stay consistent with the rules. The person who determines the presence or absence of the fetal heartbeat shall record in the pregnant woman's medical record an estimated gestational age of the unborn human individual, the method used for the test of fetal heartbeat, and the date and time of the test, results of the test. Okay, I'm going to break this down a little bit. Okay, this section is putting all decision-making into the hands of the abortionist. The type of test they'll use, the documentation. It actually uses the words good faith understanding or good faith measures over and over again in this bill, treating abortion as healthcare. Good faith measures that you will do this thing. We're trusting you to do this thing. We're trusting you to do this thing. We're trusting you to protect this baby under this law. Putting the very decision making into the mothers who want abortions into the hands of abortionists who are going to do them. Okay, it's written right in there. Later on, we got it. Okay. Oh, you see that? Awesome. Okay, next slide. We can zoom up a little bit on that. Let's see. Go down. See, they start amending and changing things, so that's not me crossing anything off. That's just the legislator says they're going down, they revise it, they cross it off. So right down here at the bottom, it talks about the purpose of determining the presence of the fetal heartbeat of an unborn individual based on standard medical practice. They just use that like vaguely, so the decision making again is in the hands of abortionists. The rule shall be required that only an examination shall be performed externally. This is actually underlined, the next line. Nothing in this section shall be construed as requiring a transvaginal ultrasound. They have that written in there. So they have that written in there, knowing, or maybe not knowing, because they never even consulted an RDMS or any kind of medical professional ultrasound tech, in their heartbeat bill, which is an ultrasound bill. When I talked to one of the senators, he's like, not to my knowledge, I don't think that we asked. And I said, that was foolish. Right. Next slide, I'm going to show you a couple things why this is so important. Okay, so then they had this thing called the Ohio Right to Life put on Legislative Day 2019, where I showed up and you know, like Wedding Crashers, where you go in and kind of like crash it. I kind of did that with the Ohio Right to Life thing. It was pretty awesome. They were asking questions about all this legislation and stuff, and my hand was raised for all these questions, and I could see them whispering, and I never got called on. It was kind of a bummer. I almost stood up and asked a question anyways. Maybe I should have. I don't know. But here's one of the things that they passed out brochures. Yep, I have little arrows there. So they finally admit that what I've been saying is true. This was just a few weeks ago. It says an abdominal ultrasound can detect a heartbeat between 8 to 12 weeks. It doesn't say 6 weeks on there. Their own words. Go down a little bit more here. It says, would allow for the possibility of abdominal ultrasound. This legislation emphasizes, though, that doctors shouldn't deviate what would be considered standard medical practice. They're saying, like, well, they can use it if they really wanted to. But we're not going to mandate it. So there's no way. I mean, there's no way it's going to protect babies. So we're being lied to by the pro-life establishment, first of all. We already knew that, but there it is in other words. If you want to go to the next slide. Okay, this is a textbook. This is kind of like the sonography Bible. It's a big, thick, huge textbook. This is the one that I reference a lot of radiologists do within the medical field. So I'm going to use this. We go to the next slide. This is where I'm getting this information from. You can zoom up a little bit on there. So in the back, there's this chart, like scroll down a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to break this down a little bit because I know I'm very short on time and I can go long-winded on this. Okay, menstrual weeks. So the age of the baby is down there, 4 weeks, 5 weeks, 6 weeks. So 6 weeks is really when you can start seeing the baby. You go down to crown, rump, legs, crown, which is top of the head, rump, baby's bottom. Okay, at first it just looks like a little grain of rice, right? There's no arms or legs that you can see, but you can see this little guy in the beating heart, okay? How soon can we see that baby? Right around 6 weeks, when it's 0.2, 0.3 what? Centimeters, 2 to 3 millimeters big. Tiny, tiny, tiny that we can see these guys. There is no way these transabdominal ultrasounds are going to see something so tiny inside a mom without getting up close and seeing it. Okay? Next slide. Oh, back one. This is just another page, just indicating, just showing. It says for early first trimester obstetric sonography, that is an indication that this is the test that we use. But it's written in the heartbeat bill. We're not going to use it. You don't need to use it. These are in textbooks. So if you go to the next slide. So these heartbeat bills is also been advertised, if you've read it, not only that it will protect babies as early as 6 weeks, but it's going to end abortion essentially. It's going to save 90 to 95% of all babies in the state of Ohio, or in any state that wants to pass a heartbeat bill. I don't know if you guys have read these articles and seen, wow, 90%, 95%, then we'll just go back and get those few extra ones. We're that close. That's what they're saying. Okay, so remember in the Ohio legislative brochure that I showed you said 8 to 12 weeks? It basically allows for a big open window. It says, well, basically, this bill is not going to protect babies up to 12 weeks, until up to 12 weeks. We allow them the wiggle room. The abortionist can say, well, I didn't see it at 10 weeks, didn't see it at 11 weeks, all the way up to 12 weeks. So it's essentially not protecting any babies in the first trimester, right? Okay, so from Guttmacher Institute, this is a chart right off there. So it says 89% of all abortions occur within the first 12 weeks. None of this should really be a surprise to us. So how is it saving 90% of all babies in the state of Ohio when it's allowing for nearly 90% of all abortions in the state of Ohio? And then even after that, even after 12 weeks, it has all these exceptions into it. The health of the mother as determined by who again? The abortionist. So even after 12 weeks, it allows for all exceptions, except so it's saving how many babies? 0. The only way, I'm just thinking, the only way it can actually save any babies is if somebody who's pregnant and wants an abortion actually thinks, oh man, now I can abort my baby now, because they've read the reports that they can't actually abort their baby. And so maybe we'll save a baby that way, but then I think, well, then somebody's going to figure out that they still can. So instead of aborting their baby at 7 weeks, they'll just go and abort their baby 3 weeks later when they learn they still can.
Or
At
they'll
10 weeks.
or they'll go to Indiana.
Or they'll go, right, or whatever, you know?
Our rates
So-
are going to go up.
They just, yeah, it's just a disaster. It's just a mess. But you know, you put a pro-life label on something, and people just get behind it without reading the bill, without understanding what it says. They just get behind it without, you know, they just trust the pro-life establishment, and they are not to be trusted. They are not to be trusted. You go to the next slide. Here's another section in the bill. I'm not quite sure where it is. If you want to go, can you zoom in a little bit, please? Okay, this is talking about we go down a little bit. You want to read through that? There's somewhere in there. Talking about no teeth to this bill. I don't know if it's on that section or up. It's a 5th degree felony. So if, hypothetically, it's not going to happen, but if it passes into law and somebody actually charges the abortionist with, because they're the only one that's actually allowed to be charged with any crime, right, in these things. So if that would actually stick, and if he would be held liable and found guilty of that, the worst that can happen is a 5th degree felony, okay? It's written in there, so it's page. So I looked up, I was like, okay, I don't know about this stuff. What's a 5th degree felony? That sounds bad, right? That's on the same level as breaking and entering, pot, shoplifting, and forgery. Murdering a child. That's the level that they put it at. So it's not a murder charge. You know, it's not really anything. So they're putting the murder of a baby on the same level as this. It's not 1st degree murder, it's a 5th degree felony, which really isn't much of anything. It'd probably be a fine or maybe a little bit of jail time. But again, probably charges wouldn't even stick anyways. They're going to manipulate the ultrasound, they're going to manipulate the paperwork, the documentation, and they're not going to see these babies anyways. And even if they did see them, I don't know how much time I lost track of time, Darren. Okay, sorry. So one of the things that got brought up to me, one of the lawyers pulled me aside and said, you know, these are really, really good points. So what we need to do is amend these heartbeat bills to then put in the internal ultrasound, and then problem solved, right? Then you can see these babies at 6 weeks. That's the solution. Said, no, you don't understand how ultrasound works. It's completely 100% operator dependent. I can't get that through your head enough. Okay? It's not like it's an X-ray where you lay down a hand, you put the scanner right on top of it, takes a picture of the whole hand. It takes the picture where I tell it to. When I'm looking for something 2 millimeters bigger, even bigger, 10 millimeters bigger, or even beyond, I can look right at something and make it look like something that it's not. Okay? There's a lot of trust that goes into this scan. So an abortionist can look at a big baby, even a baby a lot older than that, and I have actually proved this a couple times. Look for something that's coming out in the fall. There's I shouldn't say it because I'm in a little documentary that's coming out in the fall that's actually going to prove this, where I have an ultrasound machine and a pregnant mom who's 18 weeks pregnant on the table. Beautiful baby, looking at the baby, just like you would any life-affirming, do a life-affirming ultrasound, see the baby kick and everything, you know, had people in there. Said, all right, see the baby? Yeah. And I moved my hand just ever so slightly, baby's off the screen. I can hide a 4-month baby on the ultrasound and not even see it. Slide of a hand, okay? It's completely operator dependent. I can also make it look like something that's not. Instead of a whole profile baby, I can turn the probe and then I get a cross-section of an arm that just looks like a little circle with a little dot in the middle, which is like a cross-section of the bone. But really it's a big baby in there, but I would be fulfilling all the pro-life laws and still showing the mom part of her baby, but not letting it look like a baby, right? So even not heartbeat bills, but other ultrasound laws that they've passed, as long as the woman sees her baby on the ultrasound, sees the fetus on the ultrasound, she can still abort her baby. So they're going to manipulate it to show parts of the baby. They can even have words like, if you show the woman part of her pregnancy, as long as she sees that, they can still abort. Well then, why can't they scan part of the placenta? That's part of the pregnancy. It doesn't even have to be the baby. So you can make a big baby, essentially hide on the screen and show a little bit of the baby and make it look like nothing. That's easy to abort something that looks like nothing. And plus you can't make a woman look at an ultrasound if she doesn't want to anyway. But these bills are completely a disaster. It's foolish. You go to the next slide. I don't have anything after that. Oh, I just love this slide so much. I just thought I'd throw that up there extra. It's great. Not that I really had anything to do, but I actually printed these off. I went to the kiosk at Walmart and printed like a bunch of these off. It's like postcard size, like picture things, and just like handed these things out. I just love this. It broke it down to like all the people at my table for that pro-life legislative day, the difference between them, and that was like really popular. So I seated with that thing. That's really great. So one of the scriptures I was going to leave off with was, I wanted to read it exactly. Maybe I won't. 1 Corinthians 3, starting at verse 19. It says, "For the wisdom of this world is folly with God. For it is written, He catches the wise in their craftiness. And again, the Lord knows the thoughts of the wise, that they are futile." So they think they're being all crafty and smart with these bills, depending on their own wisdom, and they're foolish. So not only is it unbiblical, unconstitutional, all the things that we've heard of earlier today, but practically, in practical terms, in real life, and working within a hospital and doctor's offices, it doesn't even work practically. They're not going to see these babies, and even if they are, they can hide them and lie, and there's nobody holding them accountable, and it's not going to save any babies. So that's kind of all I got on the heartbeat bill. Don't support the heartbeat bill.